Hello everybody, welcome to Commsave Conversations. My name is James Richards, I'm the Strategic Partnership Manager here at Commsave. Today's webinar is all about the subject of mortgages and the home ownership journey. And I'm joined here today by Holly May from the Partnership Mortgage Group. Holly, welcome.
Thank you, James. Firstly, thank you for having me. It's always great to spend time with the Commsave team. As James mentioned, I am Holly May. I'm the co-founder here at the Partnership Mortgage Group. And our role is to help guide people through the biggest financial commitment they'll likely ever make, which is buying a home. With the average mortgage in the UK now being around £220,000, it's a huge commitment, and we know that for many people they find the process quite stressful and overwhelming. So what we aim to do is help people make mortgage decisions that are right for them and right for their personal circumstances. That's from giving them an expert in their corner, someone who has access to products across the whole of market and who can guide them through every stage of the journey, from the very first conversation all the way through to the moment they get the keys. So whether you're buying your first home, moving homes, or simply trying to manage your existing mortgage, good advice can save a lots of time, stress, and hopefully some money. So I'm really pleased to say that through our partnership with Commsave, all members, friends and family get access to our service completely fee-free.
Fantastic, thank you. Okay, Holly, so let's start with some of the basics. Maybe that some of our listeners, some of our members who are watching the recording of this have never looked into buying a home before. Yep. So what does the typical home ownership journey actually look like?
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, that's a great place to start. So whilst everyone's journey is completely different, most people go through 5 key stages. So stage 1, the dream stage. So this is where lots of people begin to browse properties online. They might have visited a few show homes. They're imagining what a home would look like. Stage 2, so we call this the could we actually do this stage. So this is when people are asking practical questions such as how much could we borrow, how much deposit do we need, what would the monthly payments look like, and this is often where people start getting a bit serious about viewing properties. Stage 3, so the let's do it stage. So they've started to view a few properties, they're interested in something and they've had an offer accepted. This is when the mortgage application begins. So at this point you're not legally committed into buying the home, but the seller will want confidence that you're in a strong position to proceed. Stage 4, the legal process. So this is often known as conveyancing. It includes things like legal contracts, land registry, property searches, and confirming ownership. This stage usually takes around 12 weeks and it ends with something called exchange of contracts, which is when you're legally committed to buying the home. And then finally, stage 5, completion day, the exciting day. This is when the mortgage funds are transferred and the solicitor confirms completion and you finally get the keys. So those are the kind of 5 key stages that most people go through in buying a home.
Thanks, Holly. That's a really helpful overview. In your experience, where do people tend to struggle the most?
Yeah, I mean, usually it's right at the start, so right at the beginning. A lot of people spend a lot of time in that dreaming stage and looking at properties that might not actually be realistic and affordable for them. So sometimes we see people overestimate what they can borrow, and that leads to disappointment if they find something that they love. But just as often we see people underestimate what's possible. So they might be looking at the wrong types of property within the wrong budget and the wrong types of areas. So that's why speaking to an advisor like myself is so powerful early on. One of the first things we can do to help you is get something called a decision in principle in place, which essentially means that a lender is saying, based on the information you've provided, we will be able to lend you X amount. And it's usually a quick process, there's no cost or commitment involved, and it provides a really good, serious commitment from yourself to show to the seller and to the estate agent. So if there's one key takeaway from today's session, it would definitely be to speak to an advisor early on and find out where you stand. You might even be pleasantly surprised.
Okay, yeah, that's really useful, and I think as somebody that's been through that process in the quite recent past, I certainly felt like getting that decision in principle was quite a key milestone in the whole process, so that definitely resonates from what you're saying. Now, we always like practical advice, and getting that decision in principle is a good example of that. What would your top tips be for someone who is thinking about buying a home?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are 3 kind of top tips that I always come back to time and time again. So tip 1, we've already touched on slightly, is get that advice early and make sure you're speaking to a trusted expert advisor. When people start thinking about buying a home, they often get lots of opinions from friends, family, even the typical like bloke down the pub. The circumstances are different for everyone involved. So what might have worked for your parents 20 years ago when they bought their home might not be the same for yourself. So it's completely unique to you. The mortgage market is also changing so quickly. There are hundreds of lenders offering thousands of products. So the options available today can look very different to what was available previously. That's why many of these kind of common mortgage myths still exist but aren't accurate. So speaking to a specialist advisor means you're working with someone who understands the current market and can tailor that specifically to your needs.
Yeah.
Tip 2. Surround yourself with the right support. So buying a home can feel very stressful at times. Some of the people you work with really matter. So ask yourself questions such as, can I have an open conversation with them? Will they return my calls? Do they explain things clearly? You should feel comfortable asking even those silly questions. Good advisors understand that mortgages are complicated, and their job is to make it as simple as possible and make it clear for you. Tip 3, avoid big financial changes. So when you're applying for a mortgage, lenders will look closely at income, spending habits and credit history. So it might not be the best time to take out a large car finance, for example, or open up different credit agreements, change your job unexpectedly. Lenders usually like to see stable employment and consistent financial behaviours. So even unusual transactions on your bank statements, like large transactions to family members or cash, these can sometimes raise questions. So again, speak to an advisor and they'll help you avoid these issues.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Thank you. They're really great tips for first-time buyers. I'm aware, obviously, with Partnership Mortgage Group that you help people at various different stages of the property buying and owning experience, if you like.
Yep.
So what would some tips be for people that already own their home?
Yeah, so that's a really important question, James, and many people assume mortgage advice is just for first-time buyers, but that's actually not the case. Existing homeowners can often benefit from it just as much. Again, here are some common times that it's worth reviewing your mortgage. So when your fixed rate is ending, this is the most obvious one. Most mortgages have a fixed period, often 2 or 5 years, but your product might be slightly different. When that deal comes to an end, you automatically move on to a higher rate, which is the lender's variable rate. The key tip here is with reviewing your mortgage around 6 months before, you can actually lock in a better rate in advance, and then if interest rates rise, you're protected, and if interest rates drop, you can switch on to the lower rate. So it's worth looking at the whole of market, not just your current lender. Number 2, your circumstances have changed, so life events will likely have a big impact on finances. If you're having a child, you're getting married, a partner's moving in, or you've sadly separated or divorced, a mortgage that worked for you perfectly a few years ago might not be the case today. So the good news is modern mortgages are often super flexible, more flexible than people actually realise, and there are lenders out there that specialise in all these different sections. So the best approach is simply to review your options at that time. Number 3, if you want to pay off your mortgage sooner. So for many people, being mortgage free is a major financial goal. If possible, making small regular overpayments can make such a difference. Even modest extra payments can reduce your overall mortgage term, save thousands of pounds on interest. But again, it's worth checking with an advisor. Also, there may be penalties for this, so it's making sure you know how much you can overpay and speaking to your advisor to understand that. Again, takeaway here is to make sure you're regularly reviewing your mortgage, and this can save you both money and stress over time.
Perfect, thank you. So I think that's really useful both in terms of first-time buyers and people that are already on the property ladder.
Yep.
I think probably quite a lot of our members might fall into the category of people who aren't necessarily on especially high incomes, and might therefore be struggling to save for a deposit. And I think there's certainly this perception that unless you can put down a significant deposit, that you're probably going to be excluded from buying your
Yeah.
home. So what would you kind of say to somebody that probably finds themselves in that kind of situation?
Yeah, I mean, the encouraging news is that lenders are aware of this, and they're trying to recognise this challenge and introduce different flexible options to help with this. So here are a couple of examples that are in the market at the moment. So shared ownership, a really good opportunity of getting onto the property ladder. So this allows buyers to purchase a share of the property whilst paying rent on the remaining share. It's becoming very common, especially in new build developments, and like I said, it's a great first step into home ownership. Guarantor mortgages. So this is where a family member is providing extra support or security for a mortgage. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're contributing towards those monthly payments or the deposit, but it means that they will be able to step in if the person can pay those payments. Low or no deposit mortgages. So some lenders are offering mortgages with very low deposits or even no deposits at all in circumstances. So in some cases, lenders will consider strong rental payment histories or clean credit reports as evidence of affordability. So while saving up a deposit might be challenging, there are still ways of getting into home ownership, and people don't quite realise. So again, I know I've said it before, but this is where having conversations with an advisor about your individual circumstances can really help.
Sure, okay. And in terms of our members that are out there listening to this, how does the offer from yourselves work specifically for Commsave members?
Yeah, so the good news is Commsave members can access our mortgage advice service without paying an advice fee. And this is a really valuable benefit. The average advice fee in the industry is about £500, so it's an immediate saving for Commsave members. It usually starts with a simple, no commitment telephone call where we can discuss your situation and answer any questions you might have. From there, if needed, we can provide a full consultation, personalised mortgage recommendations, support through the application process, help coordinate solicitors and estate agents, and then once you've completed and you're in the home, kind of that ongoing mortgage reviews as life changes as well. So our aim is to remove those barriers and make it as easy for people to access friendly expert guidance rather than trying to navigate such an important decision alone.
Yep. Okay, so what would you say to somebody who isn't necessarily sure whether they're ready to buy?
Yeah, I mean, you can absolutely speak to an advisor before you're technically ready to buy, and doing that means you're having conversations to understand where you stand, explore kind of your options out there and create a plan for the future. So it's a really good idea. There's no pressure or need to rush, but taking that time early on to understand your options can make the entire process actually far less stressful when it comes to buying.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Okay, I feel like that's been a really useful conversation. We've covered quite a lot there. Before we wrap up, any final advice for our members?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I've said before, buying a home is one of the biggest financial decisions you'll likely ever make, but it's not something you need to do alone. With the right advice and clear information, the right support around you, the process can be far more manageable and hopefully enjoyable. You're buying a home. So if you're a Commsave member, I definitely encourage you to take advantage of the benefit and book onto a conversation, even if it's just to ask a few initial questions, but to understand your options. You might find actually that you're closer to home ownership than you thought.
That's brilliant. That's a great note on which to end. Thank you very much indeed for that. I'd like to thank Holly from Partnership Mortgage Group for joining us today. As she mentioned, this is a service that's available to Commsave members. What we'll do is put some information in the description below with links to the page on our website and also PMG's phone number so that you can get in touch with them directly and just let them know you're a Commsave member when you call. And with that, we'll wrap up. Thank you all very much for joining us today. Don't forget to like this video, leave us a comment and subscribe, and we'll look forward to joining you on the next episode of Commsave Conversations.